Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a really interesting list for you guys. I want to talk about 10 underrated knives. Now that means something different to, everybody, a little bit at least, right? But in this case, to me it means underappreciated. Some of the knives on this list are available and some of them are not. And I think people are going to kind of wrestle with that. Like, how can it be underrated if it's not even available? Obviously, people like it. I feel like all of these knives should have had a lot more attention. I went through my collection and I picked out 10 knives that released over the last couple of years knives that I thought, I love this. Why wasn't this substantially more popular? And I've got something to say for each individual knife. So I'm going to share these with you. I'm also going to link them all down in the description, even if they're not available, so you can go check them out for yourselves. It does help my channel when you use those links, but that's entirely up to you. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. Let's start off here with an inexpensive one because most of this list is pretty expensive. This is a very recent release from Civivi. I love the Neurohaptic. This knife is so cool. And yeah, it's just a button lock with a flipper, but the whole look of this knife is so different from what Civivi typically releases, which is drop point blade, bug out handle. There's so many of those. We got something big. We got something cool. We got the Shred G10. We got the cool aggro clip point folded blade. Just awesome. This is, to me, like a budget version of the Microtech SOCOM Elite. Obviously, there's a ton of differences there, but for somebody looking for that cool, tactical, not too over the top, but it's still got that cool factor, and they don't want to spend a ton of money, the Neurohaptic at $69 giggity is honestly just an exceptional knife. I love this. Every time I get it out, I'm like, man, what a cool knife. It's a bigger guy. It's not ultra heavy, right? But it's a bigger guy, and you can, it's got all the fun fidget factor stuff, but the blade is awesome. The handle profile is awesome. It's just different and fun. And I really think that it hasn't been on the market that long, but I really feel like I was shocked that more people weren't talking about this. So some people are going to agree and some people won't, but that's definitely well deserving of a spot on this list. Moving on here, here's one that's a little tricky to find. Definitely one that I think should have received much more attention, and that's the Kane Grambo Russ EDC. I talked a lot about the full-size Russ, and I have it. It's a great one. This knife is smaller, more compact, but it has a number of improvements, including an aggressive hollow grind. I love the way that this looks. To me, it looks like Les George meets Chris Reeve meets there's a little dash of Strider in here with the see-through hardware. I love that this is a sub-frame lock with a removable cover. We don't usually see that. We usually see a liner that's attached with screws, a liner lock that's attached with screws underneath the frame. This has a frame lock, legitimately a frame lock, and this piece right here is a cover so that you can manipulate the knife freely without having to worry about putting unnecessary pressure on the lock bar. I also like the general flow and look of this knife with the frag texturing. This one has the black frame and the tumbled blade, but truly an exceptional EDC size knife. It's smaller, but not so small that I would really call it a small knife. Exceptional ergonomics, a great pocket clip with a bald spot underneath, just really cool. And man, what a performer. The edge on this is so thin. I love this knife, and I know many other people love it, but so many watching are going to go, what? Who? Where was this? And it's hard. You can't even really, the domain the domain expired, so I can't look up the original price on this. I really hope he keeps doing these because these are awesome. I believe these were at least $300, right? It's a lot of money. I know we really shifted gears there, and that's going to kind of set the stage for the rest of this video because they're all going to be expensive, but man, I love this thing. I can't believe that it wasn't, I just feel bad that a lot of these didn't make it into so many channels like top 10 or top 20 greatest of whatever year, Good, but just kind of slightly forgotten about, right? Here's a big one that you can get right now. The USA-made EMP EDC Pulse. I am shocked that you can still buy these. I can't believe that these didn't fly off the shelves. These are manufactured by Axial. EMP EDC has Pulse models, that are made in China, but this one's made in the USA and comes in at a completely reasonable $260. Seriously. If you've been on the fence about this and you're like, I don't know, it's totally worth it, right? I'm not saying that everybody needs to rush out and spend $260 on a super cool USA OTF, but this is awesome. This is utilizing a magnet cut to my knowledge, but it may be that they changed the blade steel. One of these, they changed the blade steel in production. You'll have to check the website, but really cool texturing. Just as far as like OTFs go and what they typically look like, because you're kind of limited. Like you have limited parameters considering like an OTF needs to operate on chassis, right? And so you tend to end up with like this long lighter, right? That's kind of what it looks like. Really easy firing switch and exceptional snappy power. The blade, well, it does have a totally unnecessary folder that kind of goes along with the EMP EDC look, right? You have a super utilitarian, I mean, literally an elongated utility blade. Not everybody likes that. I can't remember if they have different blade shapes. They definitely should. But snappy, and it's got that axial, that unmistakable axial feel. If you want a good, I'd still consider this a full-size USA OTF. But still compact and lightweight enough to justify, carrying and using every day. And you're just not really into the other options on the market from Kershaw, Guardian Tactical, Microtech, Heretic, right? All of those. If you're just not into those, consider this one. It is very, very good. I have very much enjoyed this knife, and I just can't believe that this wasn't talked about more, that it wasn't appreciated more than it currently is by the community. Moving on, here's literally a big one. I love this knife. I love it so much, and it's stupidly expensive, and it's just totally unnecessary and over the top. But the Wee Guthrie coming in at $297. Oh my gosh. You can still buy versions of this, but this has all the new Wii sauce, right? Where you get the super unbelievably, incomprehensibly smooth action, incomprehensibly smooth action, right? We also have contoured titanium. This one in particular, I fell in love with because of the bronze. And I think this has the best combination of, the bronze titanium meeting up with the, the smoky grays and blacks of the carbon fiber and the little subtle hints of bronze in there with the screws and the pocket clip. Right? Just so cool. And it's also huge with that beautiful hand rub satin finish on there, the bronze thumb studs. Beautifully easy to manipulate, a little scary because it's so smooth. It also has a nice front flipper. The combination of front flipper and thumb stud on this knife, so awesome. And man, the ergonomic comfort. This is a knife that people pick up and go, wow. But I feel like it's just kind of overlooked or, again, underappreciated. Not a lot of people really went super nuts for this, but I unboxed this and I was like, oh my gosh, I think it would have been cool if they had versions without the holes. I think a lot more people may have gravitated towards it. The whole people sometimes see holes and are like, no, I hate it. Whether it's trypophobia or they just don't like the look or whatever. But I kind of like the character it gives this. I kept this knife in my collection because I was so wowed by it. In fact, it's the same with all these, whether I purchased them or whether they came in as review samples. I decided to keep them because I just really, really loved them. And the Wee Guthrie really blew me away. This is a fun one. If you find one of these that you like out there, I can promise you, if you do decide to go ahead and spend that, I think the base price is $297. If you decide to do it, turn it into Porky Pig over here, then you're going to be happy with it. You're going to be really, not just happy, you're going to be extremely impressed with this knife. I think this is some of Wee's best work over the last year or so. They've had some really great stuff. Not their absolute best, but definitely one of their better ones. Here's one that you cannot get anymore, but I've confirmed that this is planned to come back in the future, and actually even a bigger version of it, and that's the Berg Blades Tick. So I have always loved Berg Blades ever since the original Golem, which I think was the original was a custom, and then they did a mid-tech, right? And then they started doing the production stuff, and that's what this is. This is a production knife. But I fell in love with the Iron Wolf, and I missed my opportunity to pick one of those up the first time. And then they came out with the Iron Pup, which I danced around for a while and just thought it's just too small for me. And then they came back out with the Iron Wolf, and I picked one up. It didn't have the exact colors that I wanted, but I was like, I'm not going to miss this again. I still have that knife, and it's great. And then he came out with something in between. I haven't been measuring all of these, but this in between, but still full-size knife, the tick coming in at 8 inches, but with the height, the handle height and blade height of the Iron Wolf, it kind of hit that just right XM18 3.5 inch feel for me. I also love that this is contoured and has the carbon fiber inlays on both sides. Absolutely awesome. We have the T8 hardware. We have a nice hollow ground. It's like an elongated clip point with a fuller that goes all the way out and kind of opens up into that fuller. And it's also an S90V blade. I love this knife. I love it. And, you know, other people did, like people who were involved. A lot of times the reason that these are sold out is not necessarily because they were like ferociously popular. It's because the original run was a much, much smaller batch than what we typically see from major production companies who sell their products on like Blade HQ or Knife Center. Berg Blades did the tick just off their own website, and they just didn't have very many. And they had a bunch of different versions, right? The base price of these came in, I think it was $315 for standard tie. A little more for the carbon fiber, right? So it's an expensive knife. But they eventually sold out. They were available for a while. They eventually sold out. And people got them and then just didn't really talk about it. I have this knife on live streams every now and then, and people ask, what is that? When did that come out? You know, and it's awesome. It's a great design. It's very, very cool. It's very pleasing. Like it's got that nice classic knife look. And yeah, another one that I feel like was super underappreciated. If you are not familiar with Berg Blades, look him up and pay attention, because the next thing that he's coming out with is very, very cool. Moving on here, I think a lot of people will disagree with me on this one. This was a popular knife, and I think it should be more popular. Therefore, I'm loosely tossing the term underrated at this knife. But this is the Exceed Designs Avere. What a beautiful looking knife. And yes, this grind out here is on purpose, but such an attractive EDC knife. Exceed Designs has made some really, really cool stuff, and they've also made some incredibly gimmicky stuff. But I appreciate that they're making things in all different, like they get into a bunch of different neighborhoods, so to speak, of EDC. And they just make a lot of different stuff. But the Avere was nailed. And this knife, to my knowledge, has never made it onto, at least on my channel, it's never made it into a best of whatever year. I can't remember if this is 2023 or 2024. But these are the types of knives that I feel bad about not celebrating more, especially when I find out that a lot of the community is that you're like, yeah, it's cool. And then they move on, you know, and it's a lot of it is that we're being force fed new models like every 3 or 4 minutes, you know, but the Exceed Avere, like, I want to take a time out from this rush forward where just the knife world is just like new model. I want to take a time out from that and just appreciate what they built here. Now, they do their assembling and their design work and all of that like in the USA. It's pretty cool that they actually do the assembling and the fitting and all of that in the USA. But the individual parts, to my knowledge, are manufactured in China. Still, though, the fact that you can, I think, still buy this knife for $180, I think that's right. I double checked it and I thought that cannot be right. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you guys are going to tell me, no, we don't know what the heck you were looking at, but I was shocked. I was shocked that you could buy this knife for $180. M390, this is number 276. We have the captive pivot, subtly contoured. It's very, very subtle. Contoured and textured, beautiful frame lock, beautiful pocket clip, great action too. Oh my goodness. The whole knife is really, really, truly spectacular. A popular one. Many of you own this knife. You're like, what are you talking about? I mean, a lot of people own it. I think this should be celebrated more. Definitely. Now, here's one that I've talked about many times, and I've voiced my opinion many, many times about the Alliance Designs EZE 2.0. little, not everybody's going to care about my reasoning here, but this is an integral, right? A Ray Laconico design. Now it has flaws, right? I mean, they didn't give us a whole lot of room in here to, get in and disengage that lock bar. The flipper tab, you almost have to bypass it and let it come down on the sharpening choil on your thumb. But the look of it is super cool. And this is a zirconium inlay. We just don't see that. It's kind of a brick, right? We have the compound tensor, just a cool looking knife and a solid one piece. I'm always attracted to these. What I thought was really amazing about this knife that you at the moment cannot get, I'll still link it, you guys can go look at all the different versions, is that the base version of this knife, which I think is utilizing an M390 blade. Did they actually put the blade steel on this? Maybe they didn't. I'm almost certain it's M390. But I believe it's all like a Riot cut item. There's a bunch Alliance designs. Usually it means like a lot of different, like you have different people involved in different OEMs, sometimes making different parts. I think this was cut by Riot and had Ray Laconico at the head of design here. But the base price of this integral, which is much more expensive to do than a two-piece titanium construction, even if it's made in China, was $375. You guys have heard me talk about this many, many times. It's exceedingly rare for a super well-made, super premium integral knife, right? We're talking contoured titanium, made by, in this case, somebody like Riot, with a premium steel blade. It's exceedingly rare to see one of those nowadays under $400. That mark is tough. The best way to get it under that, because integrals exist at that price point, right? I mean, some people will point out that there are titanium integral knives that you can get for $300. When you go and look at them, you can see why. It's because they are stupidly basic. And there's nothing wrong with them, but it's like you have to cut all corners to get down there. To even get to where it's interesting, right? Because the integral part of it is just one element, and it does make it more expensive. But in order to convince people, to pick these up over something that would be substantially, more aesthetically interesting or pleasing at a lower price point, is to make these more aesthetically interesting and do that milling, which is why it's so hard for so many companies to get these Chinese integral knives down under $400. So I thought that was pretty impressive. Obviously, this zirconium version is much more expensive. These range anywhere from $375 to well over $600 or $700, depending on whether or not you get Damasteel or whatever. But I just really, really loved the way that this looked. The choke up position is great, and I EDC'd it for actually quite a while. The blade is still dirty from the last time that I got it out, and I just never cleaned it. But just an awesome knife. I really hope that they bring this back. Do a bigger one. Make a bigger one. Come on. Laconico, make a bigger one. Make a big old meaty boy. Come on. That would be really cool. I hope these come back. These are awesome. This is the 2.0, right? So they've done a different version in the past, but just, I love it. The next knife is also an integral, and I think I can understand why this one wasn't as popular as it was, wasn't as popular as I wanted it to be, and that's the Eichwitz and George EK Folder Dagger, which has a very polarizing aesthetic to it, and some people are going to love it, and some people aren't. This is also an integral. If you put Les George's name on it right there, without even seeing it, I'm going to be interested. I'm a huge Les George fan, but I also like designs that have symmetry or near symmetry, right? So this isn't perfectly symmetrical, but it's got that look, that straight look. Little bit weird that they put pivots all the way down that do nothing. They're purely aesthetic. The one thing that I think could have assisted this knife in doing better, because I think you can still buy these somewhere, right? They sold very slowly. Number one, because it's a $400 knife, right? Not everybody cares that it's one piece. A lot of people say, great, make it two pieces and charge me $120 less or whatever, right? And I get that. I totally get that. But I think something that would have helped some people aesthetically who thought, I don't mind paying $400 for a knife, but I want it to look the way that I want it to look, is to not have these two screws here. And, I think people who are familiar with this model are going to be quick to point out, well, it's based on the fixed blade, right? So that's what they're doing. They're trying to capture the aesthetic of the fixed blade. Totally get it. I still think the exact same thing could have been accomplished. I mean, let's just cover these up real quick. Look at the change there aesthetically. I'm okay with this. I bought it, and I like it, but Look at the change here. Still not necessarily the most ideal EDC setup, given that there's no guard. You could run your finger straight up the blade. And it's also a little bit pinchy to disengage. A lot of people don't like thumb discs, right? Still an incredibly cool knife. Still one that I feel is underappreciated. As somebody who has it here is handling it, I feel like many, many more people, if they handled it and just kind of played with it for a bit and just kind of beheld it, would be like, yeah, you know what? I do like this. It is really, really cool. Those people who are willing to spend that much on a knife. But yeah, at about $400, you know, it's right there in line with what I expect from a well-made Chinese integral with some awesome designers behind it. But just exceptionally cool. And I do like the combination of the brass and the black here. I just think it's such a unique, tactical, angry look, you know? Just like it. Just love it. Moving on here. Last two. Both of these knives are US made. This is going to be a big, bold statement, but I stand by it. I want to be clear before I even show it. I do not like the price tag. I was shocked that it wasn't higher. I feel like, did they try to charge more and then bring the price down? But this knife is currently priced at $225, which, let's be clear, is still too much. But the Spyderco Bodacious is definitely an underrated knife. And those of you who own it, speak up. I know you agree with me. This does feel like a de-evolution. Like, let's be fair, and you know, I'm gonna validate the rational opinions of many members of the community here. This does feel like a de-evolution of the Shaman, right? It's a PS2 graphics Shaman, definitely. But removing do I have a Shaman out here? Yeah, here's one right here. But I have to. There we go. So getting rid of this, right, adds substantially more cutting edge. And it comes back here and people have different feelings about this area right here. And that's fine. You think whatever you want. You get more cutting edge and you can still choke up. And even though they didn't do the heavy chamfering like they did on the Shaman, which was a huge miss, like why? Just do that, right? Even though that's the case, the truth is that the ergonomics are still very, very good. When I block out my expectations for Spyderco and, you know, like my love for the Spyderco Shaman, which is one of the most atrociously priced Spydercos, is so frustrating because the Shaman, which, by the way, yes, I know that I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. I'm just going to keep doing it because it's after 6 years or 7 years. It's just funny now. Right? Why stop now? But I love this knife. I love it. There's so much of my current preferences that are based on my love for the Shaman. When I block all of that out and my expectations and what I want the Bodacious to be, I want it to be more like the Shaman, right? The more I realize it just isn't. It's not the Shaman. It was designed specifically like this. And when I carry it and I use this knife, which periodically I get it back out and I go, man, this thing is a freaking great tool. Like it's everything that's great about Spyderco. And it's a perfect example of like why fix what isn't broken. But at the same time, it's like you still could have given us the bells and whistles and some of the better, you know, like it's just such a flat, basic scale. And there is, you know, kind of an abrupt drop off, but it still is comfortable. This is a fantastic tool that costs too much money, right? It is a lot better than I think most people realize. Even if they did drop the price back, even if they did just silently give in and go, okay, fine, you guys aren't going to pay $265. I could have sworn they were trying to charge $260 or something for this. Maybe I'm mixing it up with the Shaman. But at $225, it's still too much. This is a $180 knife top, right? It really shouldn't be much more than the Manix. And I can't remember where the Manix is at currently, $165. So I don't know. But it's just a good tool. Oh my God, yeah. And so many people, you know, being turned off by the fact that it just doesn't feel like anything substantially more special than what Spyderco has been releasing over the last 10 to 20 years, right? They're not going to go for it. And especially not at that price. But those of you who did, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Spyderco's S30V, a lot of people say, oh, S30V, like, why didn't they put a special steel on it? I'm so bored of Spyderco's S30V is legendary. It is ridiculous. And their cutting geometry is so great. This knife, just having all of this edge and just coming to this abrupt end, it doesn't look great, but man, does it cut. It just feels good. When I put this knife in my pocket, it is this very solid feeling of being equipped properly for whatever, right? It's so overkill for what I'm going to use it for. But every time I put this in my pocket, I'm like, this is a serious cutting tool, right? So I know that not everybody's going to agree with me here, but I just wanted to kind of really talk about this. This is a really good knife. It just costs too much money, and I think it's definitely underrated. Moving on, this knife was the reason that I did this list, and it's actually one of few knives that's going to be re-reviewed on my channel, and I kind of am kicking myself for not having done this sooner, because this is a knife that everybody told me I just got bad luck with. The more I talk with people about it, the more I realize that's true. This is the American Blade Works Model 2, which I think might be one of the most underrated knives that I have ever reviewed. Now, these are sold out right now, but I'm certain that they plan to do more. The issue with this one, my issue with it, is that my lock bar tension was not up to my standards, and I had a little bit of lock stick. This is something that I did briefly mention in a live stream, but I didn't really do a good job of mentioning, this after the fact. The maker of this knife said, or the person behind American Blade Works said, if you send that in, I will fix it for you. And everybody told me that's not the experience that I had with mine. Mine feels great and it's totally solid. And so the more that I talked to people, the more that I realized that mine was just kind of a booger, and I thought, well, okay, I'll send that in and we'll get it fixed, and then we'll take a look at it again. Especially, I realized how dumb I was for not doing that sooner when I went and looked at the price tag on this, which I had forgotten. This is a fully US-made Magna Cut and double titanium scaled knife for $300. Is this right? Was I seeing things? $349? Are you kidding me? This is so cool. Everybody else making stuff like this in this territory, right? And it's got, compared to a Chris Reeve knife or, a Demco or a Full-Tie XM18, those have some more premium, polishes and finishes and things like that, sure. But this easily has potential. I'm shocked they're not charging even $400 for it. Again, we're not comparing this to Spyderco and Benchmade and Kershaw USA. This is small batch in-house US manufacturing. This is expensive to do. I was shocked that it was $350. I definitely need to send this in and let him tune it, and I definitely need to come back to it. This is a knife that many people love, but they didn't make a massive amount of them, and I feel like tons of people don't even know that it exists. I love the look of it. I love the texturing. I love that they did a barrier around the outside and just ended the texturing there. Captive pivot looks awesome. It's such an American-looking knife. And it's got an awesome, super utilitarian blade. Access to the lock bar is good, right? The detent, I wish was a little bit heavier, and I think that was another thing where, people were saying, mine's fine, I don't know what's wrong with yours, but maybe I just did get a super weird combo fluky knife, and it is substantially more exceptional than I realized. So I think, in this case, maybe not by my own standards, but just by hearing everybody else's opinions on this knife in the community, that I need to give this another chance. And at the same time, it's like it's underrated for a totally different reason, right? So, yeah, that's the end of this list. We had 10 knives, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's go ahead and get them all back out here before we end. Is there enough room on screen? Maybe not. We'll find out. We can always zoom out, right? But we have the American Blade Works Model 2, the Spyderco Bodacious, the Eichowitz and George EK Folding Dagger, the Alliance Designs Easy EV2, the Exceed Designs Avere, the Berg Blades Tick, the Guthrie, we have the EMP EDC Pulse OTF, and we are going to have to come back just a little bit here. Sorry, I know that's jarring to suddenly be zoomed out on one of these videos. We'll just lay the other ones up top. Then we have the Kane Grambo, or the Grambo EDC, the Grambo Knives Russ EDC, and we have the Civivi Neurohaptic. So I hope you guys enjoyed. These are always fun for me to do. It's exceptionally fun for me when I hear in the comments that, people didn't know about a knife on a list like this and they ended up picking it up or something. So let me know if you found your new knife today, or if you own one of these and you agree with me, or if you don't agree with me, right? Whatever you want to put in the comments is totally fine. Like I said, these will all be linked whether they're available or not, so you guys can check them out. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.